In his movie Brazil, Terry Gilliam posited a society so unhinged that it tortured people and then sent their widows bills for services rendered. Our fourth story in the countdown, AIG Insurance making reality out of part of that cinematic nightmare. They crashed, destabilizing the economy and requiring 4 separate federal bailouts. You and I pay them $170 billion. They pay now $165 million in bonuses to the idiots who sank the company. The specialists at AIG Financial Products, and yes, specialist is a brand name, not a description here. They received the so-called retention awards this Sunday, precipitating a surge of populist outrage. Chairman of House Financial Services Committee Barney Frank calling on AIG to fire people. The New York Attorney General Andrew Cuomo issuing subpoenas to AIG for not disclosing the names and salaries of those getting those bonuses. The Senate Majority and Minority Leader agreeing that the abuse of taxpayer money is unacceptable, and the President vowing to use the Treasury Department to get that money back.
This is a corporation that finds itself in financial distress due to recklessness and greed. Under these circumstances, it's hard to understand how derivative traders at AIG warranted any bonuses, much less $165 million in extra pay. I mean, how do they justify this outrage to the taxpayers who are keeping the company afloat? In the last 6 months, AIG has received substantial sums from the U.S. Treasury. And I've asked Secretary Geithner to use that leverage and pursue every single legal avenue to block these bonuses and make the American taxpayers whole.
Except Secretary Geithner has already used his leverage to try and block those bonuses, telling AIG's CEO last week that such retention awards are unacceptable. But he had to concede to yesterday's payout when lawyers for both AIG and the Treasury Department agreed that breaking the bonus contract, which was agreed upon last April, risked lawsuits. So now sources tell the Wall Street Journal the Treasury Department is planning on essentially holding the latest AIG bailout money, $30 billion more, hostage until the company works up a repayment plan for the financial product group bonuses. While on Capitol Hill, Democratic Congressman Gary Peters of Michigan just introduced legislation creating a 60% surtax on bonuses. His fellow Democrat, Representative Carolyn Maloney of New York, seeking similar legislation but with a 100% surtax on bonuses so taxpayers can recoup all of their money. And to add outrage to outrage, AIG also revealing yesterday just which of their customers benefited from that taxpayer bailout money. While some of the biggest recipients were foreign banks, AIG also paid out $1.5 billion to Wachovia, $2.3 billion to Citigroup, $5.2 billion to Bank of America, $6.8 billion to Merrill Lynch, and $12.9 billion to Goldman Sachs. Each of those companies had already been bailed out by the U.S. taxpayer, which means we just paid for their mistakes twice. The financial collapse, subsequent bailout, and ultimate screwing of the American taxpayer by AIG, prompting the president today to once again call for an overhaul of our entire financial regulatory system.
We already have resolution authority. Excuse me, I'm choked up with anger here. We already have some of that resolution authority when it comes to a traditional bank. But when you start getting into AIGs and some of these other operations that have a whole bunch of different financial instruments, then we don't have all the regulatory power that we need. And this is something that I expect to work with Congress to deal with in the weeks and months to come.
Once again, a pleasure to be joined by Robert Reich, who, in addition to serving as Labor Secretary under President Clinton, advised President Obama during his campaign and the transition. Thanks again for your time tonight, sir.
Well, good evening, Keith.
We and that's the American taxpayers, we own 80% of AIG. So how is it possible that apparently we don't get any say on how they spend our money? How did that happen? Why hasn't it been fixed? And should we stop referring to it as our money?
Well, it is our money. I mean, it's our commitments. But I think there's an ideological aversion in this country to nationalization. I mean, even the word nationalization or government ownership sends shivers up the spines of a lot of Americans. So we get the worst of both worlds now. I mean, we actually own these companies. We put up $170 billion for AIG, and yet we have no control. AIG is not responsible to the market. It's not part of capitalism any longer. But it's also not responsible to citizens. It's not part of democracy. AIG essentially is taking $170 billion and doing whatever it wants with that $170 billion.
The disconnect seems so obvious. The employees clearly did not do a good job. And if we had not bailed AIG out, there would be no AIG to pay these retention bonuses. As it is, the bonuses are some sort of form of retention award to retain guys who did these terrible jobs. Why is this not as obviously ludicrous inside the financial industries as it seems to be outside of them?
You know, Keith, I've been scratching my head for days trying to figure that one out. I mean, the thing is, you have in the financial industry this tradition of getting paid for doing deals, regardless of whether the deals are done with any value at all. And here, ludicrous upon ludicrous, outrage upon outrage, you have a contract between these traders and these executives and AIG that apparently predated the bailouts. Now, why it was that we didn't know, we, that is you and I and taxpayers and the Treasury Department and the government generally, we didn't know that we owed all of these predated contractual bailouts, that is, bailouts of the individuals, bonuses when we made the big AIG bailout, is beyond comprehension. Why did Tim Geithner only learn of all of this past week? I mean, again, ownership should come with some control. You and I should own and therefore control AIG.
If our head owner, in this case, CEO Obama, is instructing his Treasury Department to use its leverage to try to get the bonus money back, would he actually be saving time here by just going directly to the Justice Department and try to see if there's fraud involved in this?
Well, I think that absolutely there is fraud. And in fact, if a company like AIG is too big to fail, it's too big, period. Maybe you go to the Justice Department and have the antitrust laws break it up.
And to that point, if we own 80% of the company, can't we play pretend Wall Street with it and do the kind of thing that private owners who didn't want to pay those $450 million in total bonuses would try to do, something like spinning off that part of the company that owes the bonuses and make sure it goes bankrupt? Obviously, I'm being overly simple here, but isn't there not a way to do it? Does not the private sector do something like this all the time?
It does it all the time. And remember, this is the unit. I mean, to outrage upon outrage upon outrage, this is the very unit that came up with the notorious credit default swaps that caused all the mischief and you know, incredible cost in the first place. Yes, spin it off, sell it, get rid of it. I mean, let's give it away. Give it away to Fox News. Give it away to North Korea. It doesn't matter. Give it away.
Co-ownership, perhaps. Robert Reich, former Clinton Labor Secretary, author of Super Capitalism. Once again, it's always an education. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Keith.